Shalom, WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah Talk. This Shabbat, believe it or not, is already the Shabbat before Passover. It's known as Shabbat HaGadol. It's a good time to prepare for the Seder ahead. And so I wanted to share, actually, rather than Torah about our Torah portion, Sav, some Torah about Pesach itself, something that might help inform your Passover Seder. So, right after the very famous part of the Seder, the four sons, right, the wise son, the wicked son, the simple son, and the one who does not know how to ask a question, we come to a puzzling sort of part where it says, this is before we tell the story, my father was a wandering Aramean, but after the four sons, it says, Mitchila uvdei avodah zarah hayu avotenu. In the beginning, our ancestors were idol worshippers, v'akshav kervanu hamakom la'avodato. But now, God has brought us near to serve the Lord. And the question is, what is this doing here? Right? What does our ancestors being idol worshippers have to do with the story of the Exodus? Why is that in the Haggadah? And why is it in the Haggadah right after the four children? And then we suddenly go to our ancestors. And the commentary tells us that this is a reference to Abraham, right? Before Abraham and Sarah became the first Jews, they were descended from idol worshippers. There's a lot of famous stories. Maybe you know the story of Abraham and his father's idol shop, right? But while it's always nice to bring up Abraham and Sarah, and to give them, their kavod, their honor as the first Jews, what are they doing in the story of the Exodus, which is after they're both gone? Very interesting answer comes to us in a comment of the Ramban of Nachmanides on Genesis 12, verse 10, when we're told with Abraham that there was a famine in the land. And what he says is that when we talk about Abraham going down to because there's a Pharaoh in the land, he thereby alluded to Abraham that his children would go down to Egypt on account of a famine to dwell in the land. So Abraham's trip to Egypt because of the famine that we read about in Genesis seems to foretell the Exodus story, that the Jews, that his children, Jacob and his sons, will go down and their families will go down to Egypt a few generations later. But why? Why do we see the path of the parents foretelling the journey of the children? And the Ramban, Nachmanides, brings us a explanation from Bereshit Rabbah, from the Midrash, which says, Rabbi Pinchas said in the name of Rabbi Oshaya that the Holy One, blessed be he, said to Abraham, go forth and tread out a path for your children. Thus you find that whatever is written concerning Abraham is also written concerning his children. That Abraham's whole journey is in fact a foretelling of the journeys of his children. In connection with Abraham, it is written, the Midrash continues, and there was famine in the land. And in connection with Israel, it is written, for these 2 years have a famine been in the land. So we should go to this part of the Joseph story and go to get food. So, but this is now listen to what Ramban says. Know that Abraham, our father, unintentionally committed a great sin by bringing his righteous wife to a stumbling block of sin on account of his fear of his life. Where he goes to Egypt, he passes Sarah off as his sister, and therefore endangers her modesty and her I would say devotion as a wife, but that's definitely the wrong word. Endangers her felicity as his wife. And listen, he should have trusted that God would save him and his wife and all his belongings, for God surely has the power to save. In leaving the land, he had committed a sin, for God would redeem him from the famine, or he should have believed. It was because of this deed, here we go, because of this deed that the exile in the land of Egypt at the hand of Pharaoh was decreed for his children. In the place of justice, there is wickedness and sin. So what is this trying to tell us? It's trying to tell us that, not, by the way, I think we tend to read this as a cause and effect. Because Abraham sinned, his children had to suffer. And the Torah has places where it says the sins of the parents will be visited upon the children, which doesn't seem fair. But one interpretation of this is that it's not reward and punishment, it's cause and effect. That we have a tendency to be like our parents, whether we like it or not. And ultimately to walk the paths that our parents walked, whether we like it or not. And so when you come to this passage in your Seder, that at the beginning we were idol worshippers, I encourage you to mention Abraham and Sarah's journey to Egypt, how it foretold the Exodus story, ultimately condemning their children to do the same, and maybe have a moment of reflection. We are, in fact, the Abraham and Sarahs of the next generation. And what are the things that are so important to us for our children to continue? And what are the things that we hope, the patterns that we hope can be broken? In that way, perhaps we can free ourselves from an inevitable or seemingly inevitable chain of events that keeps us and our families in a different kind of slavery, but in the slavery of the inability to make a free choice. And then after Passover, we can work to make it so. I wish you a Zis Pesach, a happy Passover. Enjoy Shabbat HaGadol, Shabbat Shalom, and it should be a wonderful, meaningful, and kosher holiday for all of us.